It's the first Property Tribes TV interview of 2012, and I am delighted to welcome UKIP leader and Euro MP Nigel Farage. Welcome, Nigel.
Thank you.
Obviously I want to talk to you about property. Do you see that there is a housing crisis looming in the UK? I mean, obviously we've got too many people and not enough houses. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, demand supply, of course, is what regulates all markets in the end. And I've been watching the work that Andrew Green has been doing from Migration Watch, who studies population movements and changes in Britain. He makes the point, we have to build 270 new houses every day just to cope with new migrants into Britain. On top of that, of course, you've got family breakdown, people living in smaller units, and a big social housing problem too. You know, whilst the 1980s idea that people should own their own properties, I completely agreed with that and understood that, we've been left with a situation where the housing stock for social housing is really not very good at all. I've also done some FOI work in the last couple of weeks on this, and there are still lots of people earning over £100,000 a year living in social housing. I'm sorry, it's not what it's for, and I'll copy you in on all the answers.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. What's your policy or your thoughts on housing benefit being paid direct to tenants and actually not coming to the landlord in certain cases? I've actually heard of £8,000 worth of housing benefit being sent out of the country to build somebody's house in Poland.
I hadn't actually realised until about 18 months ago that the housing benefit went to the person and not to the landlord. I just assumed that in any sane kind of structure, and of course I found that it's not very sane. Bonkers. What an absolute total waste of taxpayers' money. This system is clearly, as I've learnt about it, being ripped off and abused. It's a nonsense, and this is something the government could grip, and Grant Shapps should grip this right now and deal with it.
Absolutely. What can UKIP do to help first-time buyers? Because obviously a lot of them are struggling to get onto the property ladder. There's little financial products for them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, after all the years of excess that we've been through, I'm not going to give some glib, simple answer, because I don't want us to go back to the Northern Rock mortgages.
No, absolutely.
I really don't. Now, I've got a son in his mid-20s who asked me the very same question that you just asked me. He thinks I'm going to pay for it, but I'm sorry, I'm not. It is difficult. It is difficult. The healthiest thing in society in terms of housing would be if we had a relatively slack period on pricing for a period of time. Clearly, stopping mass migration into Britain would be the biggest single factor in that, and that would make an enormous difference. But I think government has to be a bit cautious here. I don't want to encourage the culture that people of my age and younger got into, which was we had to mortgage ourselves up to here to get onto the property ladder. So no swift, easy solutions, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. And also, what are your thoughts on the fact that the EU is trying now to muscle in onto buy-to-let and try and regulate what we've got going on in this country, because it's so different to the culture of what goes on in Europe? Yeah,
I mean, in fact, the whole thing's different. We as a country tend to own more houses. They tend to have a lot more letting, but also a lot more social housing in those countries too. What they're trying to do here, they're trying to control the mortgage market. And what that will mean for people who are in the buy-to-let business is they will not be able to use the value of existing properties if they're mortgaged as part of their collateral to buy more properties. So what it'll mean, I suspect, is for the smaller and medium-sized operators, if this happens, life is going to be very tough indeed. It is the small and medium-sized people who probably in many ways have the best relationships with their tenants, who are potentially going to be the worst affected by this. I can't predict yet what's going to happen with the legislation, but frankly, the attitude of Brussels these days to anything uniquely British is not very helpful.
Absolutely. Final question on the subject of housing benefit. Obviously it did have to be reduced, masses of taxpayers' money going out, housing benefit in many cases being higher than private rents. What would be UKIP's policy on housing benefit?
Well, I think actually the government is trying to do some of the right things. So, I'm not just going to oppose them for the sake of it. They are trying to do some of the right things. The trouble is the whole social security system, including housing benefit, is so bedeviled with complexity. But for the moment, I think that's one area they're trying to do the right thing.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And on behalf of the landlord community, I would like to thank you for taking the time out to talk to us here. We really appreciate it. And thank you for an amazing speech tonight. I really enjoyed it. And I wish you lots of luck. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you.